here we are, second battle out of Crimean War set. Unfortunately, I still haven't gotten anywhere really in the historical stuff. I read a little bit of it, but then, I don't know, between dancing, gaming, getting hooked on the online crap, and trying to recuperate whatever, I really haven't. Oh, also I got a cigar magazine, which I always feel like I have to read those. But also I have to say, the historical booklet that came with this one, I don't know, it's not exciting me the way that reading the histories used to out of the magazine or whatever. I don't know if this one's particularly dense or less enjoyable at the start or whatever. So, for example, I really enjoyed reading the historical stuff for Seljuk. But then again, that's a period that I'm particularly interested in and everything. If this was a World War II game, I probably would be really uninterested in the historical. This is sort of in my mixed area. But yeah, anyway, so I don't know a lot about the context here. What we do have here, and maybe Alma tells me this in the introduction. They do not. In this one, it does tell me that it's battalion scale, right? Well, I thought it did. Oh, battalion level, yeah. Which I'm guessing is the size of the individual units. That makes me feel like these are regiments, the parent units. Parent units aren't important in this one. The exclusive rules in this don't modify the base rules too much. Oh, in my setup, I found I'm missing a Russian artillery. Now, it may not be completely missing because setup is such a pain after everything got jumbled together. But I'm using a game turn marker for a Russian artillery. It's going to be the same value as these guys. It's the third heavy. I would be highly suspicious if it wasn't. I would make a counter if I was sure I was missing it, but I'm not sure I'm missing it. Okay. We got your initial deployment set up. There was some errata on that. I checked the errata about the artillery too. Russians get to go first each turn. It's going to be 12 turn play. Time span is 45 minutes per turn. All Russian artillery units and the British Barker's artillery have a movement allowance of 3. Okay. But the other artillery in the game have a 0, and they do have it put in that position the same as in the Alma battle, where everything had a movement allowance. You know, if they were going to do this, they should do it across all the games. Just put the movement allowance on everything. What the hell? I think it's silly to not include the movement allowance if you're going to put that information on some of the counters anyway. And it's just beginning to feel kind of goofy. All right. Reinforcements. I have not pulled them out yet. Let's do that. Well, let me go over the rules and then we'll do it. But yeah, the French are going to get some on turn 3. The Brits get some on turn 4. The Brits get some more on turn 5. If the Russians move east of the 0400 column, that better be west. I don't know. They seem to have an issue with East and West in this series. What is that? 1721. Yeah, it's West. The French additional reinforcements enter the game. In the next Allied movement phase, the threat of those units forestalled any attack up on these heights. And that's another pile of French units that I'll get out. The 4 redoubts. Okay. The 4 easternmost redoubts. Yeah, we don't know if they know east from west here. This is 18. Okay. In 1312, this one and those over. Have special fire combat and victory point mechanisms. They each have an artillery unit in them. An artillery unit on the bottom of the stack in the redoubts is allowed to engage in fire combat despite its position in the stack. It's going to be hard to remember because Alma changed so many rules. So like 2 artillery could fire together and shit like that. However, the artillery unit may not be attacked if it's on the bottom of the stack. Now, the artillery that's here is weird. It does not have a letter on it. It looks like it might. It's hard to tell. We look on the back of here, and we don't have an I, we don't have a J. However, we have something interesting coming up here, which makes me... They have a fire strength range of 1 hex. I'm beginning to think that that's just their fire strength on there. They have a fire strength of 1 with a range of 1 hex. So it's, I don't even know if it's artillery. It may just be additional firepower there. However, it's treated like artillery because if the Russian player forces the retreat of or eliminates the unit stacked with the emplaced artillery unit in one of the 4 redoubts, and a Russian unit exerts a zone of control, the Russian player is considered to have captured the emplaced artillery and is removed from play, and it's going to get victory points for it. Now, this one too has this is no that yeah. The Russian player may then advance into the redoubt even if they were fire combating. So that's a little weird. No Russian unit needs to occupy the redoubt for the artillery to be captured. Yeah, but they're allowing the redoubt to be captured with it. If the Russian player fails to capture the gun in a gun in one of the 4 redoubts, then the Allied player may deny the gun and its attendant victory points to the Russian player by simply removing it by spiking it. Now, you don't want to do this because you get victory points for keeping those guns, but you deny the Russians victory points for them. And we'll take a look at what those different points are. But then we look here, the Allied player denies the redoubt by removing them. Any remaining guns during any Allied movement phase is not forced to remove any or all of them, may use ones that are not captured or spiked against the Russian player's units. Now, if we take a look at the victory points, capturing the redoubt artillery is worth 3. Having... Now this, you see, this is points occupied for being the last to occupy the 3 westernmost redoubts. That's these 3, I guess, because they have different numbers is huge. But points for every redoubt artillery remaining at the end of the game is 6 each. So if you think you can hold them, it's worth it. But like this one looks really questionable. So if I get a turn, I think I will spike it. Oh. All right, fatigue. Here we get to something that's added to the system that's a little painful. The British units entering the game as reinforcements, only those units, represent troops manning the siege works around Sevastopol because they're fatigued from sleeping in trenches and whatnot, they're going to be affected. Only those reinforcements are subject to fatigue. Each unit's initial fatigue level is equal to its morale. Each time one of these units moves its full movement allowance in a game turn, executes a melee attack, or suffers a disruption, its fatigue level is reduced by 1. When it reaches 0, the unit is fatigued and is disrupted for the rest of the game. The unit may not be rallied. And they list who it is that's affected, and then they suggest a sheet of paper. Now, this is so different. SPI at this time, usually if you had a rule like that, I'm thinking here in TSS with the fatigue rules or the brigade effectiveness chart and stuff like that, you had a sheet of paper, you know, that you could photocopy or whatever. Not that that helps me. I found out, yeah, my ink is fucked up. I tried to replace another with an ink cartridge, and that wasn't working, and then I fucked that ink cartridge, so it doesn't work. And I don't know. I never used to replace the ink. My wife used to always do it. So those cartridges have been in there for, you know, going on 5 years now. At least. Probably longer because, yeah. But anyway. I mean, it's not like I print much. She used to do a lot of printing. So anyway, where were we? We're on the demoralization. No, the fatigue. Yeah, and I guess what I'm going to do is pull out a counter sheet, something, you know, some number counters, and put them under these guys. Something that has zeros on them. I don't know. And you could always move just a little less than your full movement allowance. But getting involved in combat, melee combat, is definitely an ouch. Okay. Demoralization. One of the reasons the British initiative was so low throughout the battle was fear of losses. Okay. When the sum of non-parenthesized melee strengths of eliminated British units exceeds 22, the British are demoralized. Henceforth, each British unit functions as if its morale rating were half the printed rating. I don't know how that interacts with the fatigue. This is kind of interesting. Like, I immediately come up with a question, well, if my morale is half, does my fatigue base number drop by that? I don't think so, but because that'll make things more complicated. Because many of the units were under strength, the Allied player can stack British cav units 4 strength points per hex. If 2 or more cav units are stacked in the same hex. Now, what is a strength point? This is very interesting, right? If we look at the base rules, we have fire strength and melee strength. Which one's which? Well, the cav generally don't have any fire strength, so I'm going to say it's melee, but is that specified in here, in the corrections? It is not. If 2 or more cav units are stacked in the same hex, it's still possible to have an artillery or horse artillery in the stack also. Okay? The aqueduct. I was expecting to see this. I guess it's way back there. That's the only thing that looks like one. Yeah, that's got to be it. Running through here. The aqueduct affects the melee strength of all units attacking out of it. It also inhibits movement of artillery and cavalry. All units attacking out of the aqueduct have their melee strengths halved, rounding fractions down. Units defending defend with their printed. They're not affected. The aqueduct has no effect on fire combat. It does have another effect on movement. The cost to enter an aqueduct is 3. Cav and artillery are not allowed to enter it. And, okay. Victory is awarded to the player who's accumulated the greatest victory points. Sure. Each player keeps track of them, again, on paper, but that's usual. There's other ways to do it. So you get points for killing melee strength points of infantry, of British infantry, French infantry or cavalry, and Turkish infantry. These are Turks up here. Not the color I would have chosen for the Turks, but okay. British cavalry is worth 2 points. Redoubt artillery are worth 3 points each. Regular British artillery are worth 8 points each, and that includes some guys who can't move. Exiting units off the south edge of the map, they say at hex 2026. They got the number wrong. It's this hex. Not that 2026 doesn't exist. That's why. Are worth 15 points for getting a couple of units off. Points for operating the 3 easternmost easternmost redoubts. Here they actually mean east. Is worth 30 points. Points for, okay, so killing Russians is worth 1. Redoubt artillery that you're able to hold on to is worth 6. Russian artillery is worth 15 each. Ouch. I'm here using this damn game turn marker because I figured I'd lose some. Yeah, I really don't want to. And occupying or being the last to occupy the 3 westernmost redoubts, which the Russians can still attack without involving those units, is 30. So there's going to be kind of a fight over this redoubt, basically. I'm almost out of battery. That is the game. I did want to talk about the designer's notes, which really aren't designer's notes at all, as far as I'm concerned. It gives you the charge of the light brigade and the charge of the heavy brigade here. And very little else. So, look, you got an extra page, basically, because you're just being told, okay, you know, we need to do these the exclusive rules on 4 pages. Back page is going to be the standard rules tables unless you really, really need otherwise. Put what you can. This game doesn't change much from the base game. A little bit more care could have been done in making sure the exclusive rules were correct. I don't know what I would put here, you know, honestly. Like, if this were modern day, this thing would be on one sheet of paper, and I wouldn't worry about printing these charts because they're on every single, you know. You've got 2 standard rules that have them. You've got all the other exclusive rules have these exact same charts reprinted on them. I just wouldn't have done it. But I probably wouldn't be doing designer's notes at all in these. Well, this guy had to... Alma went far from the base game. This one does not go very far at all. It adds a few little trinkets. I got to look up those reinforcements, put them somewhere so that they're only in this game's little Ziploc. And yeah, I'll keep looking for that artillery unit. I'm really not happy about missing it. I thought this was a fully accounted for and perfect game. Of course, I might have lost it too. Oh, this really sucks. So I've got to pick by designation of unit. There's nothing to distinguish between the different units in the set, except they came on different counter sheets maybe initially, but I've got to find the 57 4th. I have 2 instances of it. One is for this game, one is for the next game. I'm assuming this one with a lower morale and more melee strength is for this one because it's more in line. But it's hard to tell. Some of these are 3-2s. I don't know. I got no idea. Shouldn't make much difference. I also say designation is not that clearly written on the counters, and in some cases, you know, counters sometimes get a little teeny bit cut off or whatever. In some cases, it's hard to find. It is it is not a good idea to only give that piece of information. Think about something like OCS or whatever, which will give you the unit and the values that it has in the setup. And there's no reason they couldn't do that. It's not like, the extra ink costs anything particularly significant. Printing a sheet of paper is pretty much printing a sheet of paper. Yeah, I know, there's a tiny bit of cost, but they don't get charged by the ink. They send it to a professional printer, and they get charged by the number of colors. And maybe if they did an all black page or something, it might get charged more. But like normal text, you're allowed to have as much as you don't get charged by each pixel of ink. Anyway, I'm having nightmares with the setup of this. I could look in the counter scan and find which unit belongs in this battle. Not the only unit of the 4th that that has the same issue. The 20th and 21st also do. I could get all the units being exactly the same on this, and here all the units of this other would be exactly the same too, except they've got like a unit that's combining 2 of the battalions here. I suspect very strongly this is the correct alignment. I will check this counter scans to make sure, but this is what I'm going with for now. Add to the fun, and this is different. SPI is usually not bad at this. I've got 2 copies of the 7 Lig 2-1 French. Now these are weird because if these are in another battle, they'll probably get used. They probably will not get used in this battle, so I don't know what to do about this. There's supposed to be a 7 Lig 1-1 and a 7 Lig 2-1. I think there's a misprint here, but where it should be the 1-1 and 2-1. But it's quite possible that I'm missing the 1-1, and the 2-1 is supposed to go over on some other battle that I don't have, because they don't distinguish between the different battles, and it's not a shared set or anything like that. So it's fucking pissing me off. If you're gonna make a counter sheet for each battle, distinguish in some way. Put some kind of little letter. GMT is finally learning that. But anyway. It is really, really annoying to have that because I don't know if I'm missing a piece, probably 2 pieces then, and these belong in another battle. It doesn't seem like it. It feels like there aren't other pieces quite like this. So this is the French optional reinforcements that cannot and will not come in. An interesting thing about the British, all their infantry is the fatigue stuff, except for 1 infantry that's here. They have no infantry on the battlefield at the start, which does make it a little easier in terms of identifying if I wanted to keep it on a sheet. But I've got counters that run, down to a 0, so I will just find a set like that. Finding a counter scan was not the easiest thing in the world. BGG didn't have any images of this one. They had Alma. Web Grog Nerds didn't have anything. I'm not sure they tend to reproduce the counters. I was able to, in maps and images like that, I was able to find Russ Gifford's site. I always forget that it exists, but it is a hell of a resource for SPI stuff. And here I saw Crimean War Quad complete, marked complete in terms of the resources. I look into it, and it only has Alma's exclusive rules map and counter screen. But then I thought, these were sold as individual items. I left him a note about it because he's got it marked wrong for Crimean War. But he does have Balaclava. In fact, checked. I think he has all of them. I checked everything except Inkerman for whatever reason. And what I assumed is correct. I got the counters with the right, I got the right counters in the right places. The French unit is indeed just a misprint. It's got right on his counter scan. It's got 2 for this battle of the same unit. And then I am actually I've looked through here. I don't think it's in here, but it could be hidden somewhere, or laying somewhere that I don't know. But I am indeed missing that artillery piece. I think I'll just make it. It'll be on black and on green instead of white on green, just so that I have, a replacement piece in there. And then I'm ready to go. But it was kind of funny to chase all over the place to try to find a damn counter scan of this one. The only counter scan I think that was on BGG under Crimean Wars Battle was also for Alma, and worse, it was for the DG reprint. So it's like, yeah, that doesn't help me. I also did not find any more modern errata for this than what's there. I found some less modern versions. More attention when rain's gonna happen. Like my little gadget that I have on my computer, widget, whatever, tells me that it was gonna rain in the PM. Yeah, it just started raining now. Now I got up at around 1:30. I could have gone shopping today. If I had known that the chance of rain was going to be relatively low, between like, I don't know, 2 and, I don't know, it gets dark so early. I mean, even just waking up at 1:30, it takes me, I'd have to get ready and whatnot, so it would be at least 2 before I left the house. And it takes 3 hours for the whole thing. That gets me to 5. It's, I think, later than 5 right now. I looked for, I replaced that counter. My beautiful artwork. I should not do things. My hands have gotten less steady. I looked for, I'm trying to figure out a counter sheet that I have that has zeros and other numbers on it. And they don't have to go very high. And the only thing I could think of immediately was the Central Front series, which unfortunately is down the basement. I have the Hofgap box here with everything except, I think, the counter mix. I think. Maybe I have a lot of the other stuff there. But I figure I'm never going to play it unless I play the whole bunch, the whole 5 maps now that I have made. Certainly not without the 3 maps that I have. And the other thing I can think of is Kremlin, which I also don't have up here because I decided, that's not really that historical. Oh, actually, my Kremlin's not. I don't have the World War I. It might actually be up here. Let me look some more. But nothing else comes to mind that has zeros in it. Republic of Rome does. Yeah, look in there. That might actually have them in the counter tray. I used to always have that game in a counter tray, but I probably took it out. Kremlin actually was up here. I forgot it was more. It's a more modern. Like I think about the Revolutionary War, or the Revolutionary Era one with Lenin dying and whatnot. But no, I got this here, and what's more exciting, not only does it have the number counters, but it actually is in a counter tray, because I haven't played Kremlin on video yet, so I haven't said, how often am I going to play this? It's worth sorting when I need to. I don't know why. I have so many fucking counter trays. I really ought to, like, keep some games in them, but I'm like, if I'm not going to play something more than one, once every 10 years or something, it seems like a waste to keep it in a counter tray. So I think the games that I used to have in them, Empires of the Middle Ages, Republic of Rome, these were things that I played a lot back in the day. But now I'm like, yeah, I play it once, get it on video, and then I'm not going to solo it again, because the flow of games is just, I just have too many already. It's going to take me 10 years to get through what I've got, and I do keep buying some, although I've slowed down a lot. All right. Well, that took us a long time to get to the start of the game, but I am going to load up another pipe and get started because I feel like playing. I am probably not going to go dancing tomorrow. I don't know. We'll see. It's supposed to rain, and I'm like, yeah, I really need to go shopping. And Saturday I could. It's going to be another kind of drizzly, dreary day like today, but it's not supposed to rain. But I don't know. What sort of broke me, I think, was I've gotten a Lyft shopping like 3 times this year. And now it's like, I realize that it's a possibility, One of them was when I had a guy staying here. Yeah, I can write that off, but that already started breaking things. The other 2, yeah, and it's like, oh, well, maybe. And I mean, if I asked, I would be able to, but I don't want to do that. But I'm like, it's just like something in my self-sufficiency broke by allowing me to go shopping without the cart, without my little cart and whatnot. And I also did like a couple of little shoppings where I filled in stuff. So yeah, it's just like my standards and patterns have broken to some extent. And you can never break the patterns because things don't go back. They don't work right anymore. As soon as anything changes, it degrades. Yeah, it's already 5 o'clock. Like, it's only 5 o'clock and it's already fucking dark out everywhere. Like, I have gotten so used to leaving for shopping late. My wife used to, when we used to go, we would leave at like 9, maybe 10. She'd wake me up at like 9 a.m. or something. We'd leave at 10 or something like that. Pretty much regularly, except during the summer, maybe we aimed a little earlier to avoid, it getting too warm. And during the winter, maybe like an hour later when it was really cold out or whatever, but probably not. But yeah, I don't have that kind of rigid pattern anymore. And I've gotten kind of into the flow of, yeah, as long as it's not a hot day, I can go at like 2 or something. I leave at 2, I'm going to be getting home, it's going to be dark like this, or close to it, It takes, in transit, it takes me an hour and 15 minutes each way, basically. So that's 2.5 hours gone, right? And then we're looking at, okay, if I got it at 4, that would put me to 4:30. I'm going to be in the store for a half hour, almost assuredly. I'm getting home in this dark if I had left as early as I possibly could have today. And, wow. I don't know how I'm going to get up early. I guess I could, set up an alarm or something, but Jesus. All right, let's get playing. I'm sorry. I'm just so dumbfounded by what a narrow amount of light that I get in the winter. Now, some of it is I had a power outage. Well, I had my fucking E-Web guy, the electric guy, came by and replaced my meter with one that they don't have to come back here and look at. I think so. Somebody had just looked at it recently. So I think probably they complained about that. They want to use microwaves or whatever to communicate with the meters so they can just drive by. But in doing so, he cuts my power, which really kind of sucked. I don't know. I feel like some kind of warning should have been given. Hey, you're going to have your meter replaced. Nothing like that was in place, and they just, they cut your fucking power. Sure, a power outage could happen or whatever, but if they know, they should be able to tell you. And so I ended up having to reset all my clocks, and they're actually all reset to standard time now instead of the stuff that's on the computer that handles itself automatically being on whatever the time actually is, and me just staying on daylight savings time. But this is going to this just pisses me off because I'm so used to having everything an hour off, but subtracting an hour is hard. Boy, I don't want to start, do I? I don't know. I mean, I kind of do. The problem is, I don't know how much of Alma's, let's change the rules is fucking with me. So I feel like I have to look over the standard rules again and try to purge all of the stuff that was in Alma. In particular the parent unit, but I can deal without that. I barely could handle that anyway. I guess the artillery was a little different. They didn't have zones. They had retreat before combat. They had all kind of weird stuff. I think that's the only thing. And this has its own special stacking rules, and some of the artillery operates specially. Okay, let's do it. Really, let's do it. Let's play. Seriously. The other thing, it's that there were movement allowances on all the counters. Now I have to get used to whatever the standard movement rates are, which I know is 8 for cav. I think it's 5 for infantry because cav could go 6. Yeah. And artillery is specified and it's printed on the counters. No, it's like 3. It's printed on the counters if it's 0, which if you're going to do that, just fucking put it on everything. Batteries that aren't charged. The load one, and I'm not sure that the last one I put out was. So I'm starting by swarming this redoubt, and I feel like that's pretty important, being able to hit them with a lot of units. I don't think I can take this one until I can take these two. I'm going to try to swarm this one as well with what I can. There's some stupid cav and shit in the way that really doesn't feel like the right stuff to be attacking a redoubt, although it does have a decent melee strength. But remember, they become disrupted if they fight. All kind of crap like that. Now, the Brits have nothing but cav, so there is that. My initial attacks. I've moved forward here. I think I'm going to try to hit this one first and work my way across to get a lot of power on this one. I'm going to try to take these two guns out. The Brits don't get a chance to spike these until their turn, but they do get their defensive fire. Isn't terribly good, so it's 2 points here. That's defensive fire only. 1 point for the artillery as best as I can tell. The 3 table has trouble getting even a 2. Luckily, some of these Russian units have crap morale. Let's hit this one. And we do get a hit on it, making it fall back as well. And fire combat, luckily for us, these units I'm facing have crap morale, including the garrison artillery here. This one's disordered. I don't have to attack it, but I'm thinking maybe I want to anyway, because it's so weak. This one, even fire combat alone, it allowed me to advance into the hex, which is kind of cool. And, oops, I attacked with a cav. No, I did not. That was fire combat alone. Excellent. so I don't even disorder my cav. But I feel pretty comfortable with what I got. Now, the Brits are going to have a hard time because I got these artillery here that can't move. And then I got fucking cav that really doesn't want to fight. And I don't know what I'm able to do until I get some infantry on the board. I feel like I don't have much chance. Now, the heavy cav historically did some damage. The light brigade, the overall units have to be brigades. The light brigade ended up obviously getting itself mauled. The heavy brigade, maybe not as much, but still. So I've got this question of, do I want to melee? Sure, because we want to get those victory points for the artillery. They're like worth 3 each, which is a lot more than anything else. So now we're looking at 4, 8. Oh, we're going to be on a shitty table. We're attacking with a 3 morale at least. We have a 3 morale unit. But we're at 4, 8, 9, 10, 11 to 1 in the redoubt. That puts us all the way up here. There's no reason not to attack. And 3 morale has a pretty good chance. We wipe it out. And we can advance. So that's 2 guns we've captured. Got to keep the spiked guns separate. I think Turks count a point each too, don't they? Yeah, Turkish infantry count a point too. So far I haven't done any morale hits on anything. I would get my rallies here. I have a chance. That unit got shot. Didn't something else get shot? I think there's a unit under there that got shot too. This one recovers. The other one probably doesn't. It's probably a 2 morale because I shot at it. How about that? All right, and that'll put it over to the Brit turn. And I have no idea what to do with the Brits. Do we charge? What I'm gonna do is I'm definitely gonna spike this gun, but I think I'm just gonna spike both the guns because they're just not worth that 3 points. I'm not gonna be able to save the guns. Now, if I'm not gonna be able to save the guns, that makes the charge a lot less viable an option. So I think I'm gonna look for defensive terrain. Nothing requires that I do the charge of the light brigade here. I'm just doing my best to screen at this point. I did find a 2nd infantry unit here. These marine infantry that I have markers for. These guys, I don't know. I'm falling back. The guns are so effective at range 1, but they're, like, especially the cav, I kind of just want to be able to fall back as much as I can. Because there's not really a terrain value, except that the Russians get points for getting a couple of units off of here. They get a shit ton, 15. I don't know how I'm going to stop the Russians from taking these 3 that are worth 30. Just don't see, I don't see a way of defending things. I'm like hoping that the British and French can turn things around once I get some quality infantry on the board. But the cav just does not seem to me to be effective enough. So I'm just falling back. Those militia could move too. Let's buy some time forcing the Russians to attack them. But that's going to put it to turn 2. And this feels like just an impossible scenario for the Allied forces. They just have so many things against them. Like the British initiating melee with their infantry, ending up causing fatigue points, and the demoralization level and everything is just working against them. The only thing working for them is these Russian troops suck. But what I really want to do is get into a position where I can shoot them and make them run away, so I don't have to actually fight them in melee. Yeah, setting up to take another couple of these redoubts out. Honestly, I think the Allies have already kind of lost the game, but we'll see. We'll see if some sort of counterattack can do me any good in terms of regaining those. I just don't think it can, but again, the historical situation of charging with the cav to try to defend the guns there, that seems really, really likely to fail badly. Those two fall easily as well, and now I'm to the Brits. I just honestly don't know how the Russians can be stopped from winning. This feels completely unbalanced. The Brits fall back once again. Got some French coming in, but it's just French cav, right? No. It's decent cav. Where do they even come in? I didn't worry about that. 0108. Wow. That's up here. Huh. So the game turn 3 and 4 reinforcements come up here. We might be falling back too far. I don't know. Completely forgot to mention, I started reading the historical stuff again, and I'm getting to where they're actually making it into the Crimea as opposed to deploying in the Bosphorus and nothing happening and political maneuvers with the Austrians. It's well written. It's fine. It's beginning to engage me. It's just I found things to drive me away from reading it. I also probably was reading it outside in bad light the first time, which didn't help. Let's continue their advance, only taking out one redoubt this turn, but we got them all, so once we get this one. But I'm extending some forces up here against the French if they want to fight me. And now they can reposition behind that 0400 line safely because otherwise the Russians will trigger this big force. Yeah, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get a good combat result against, although my morale's a lot better. These are fucking cav. I'm so afraid of using cav always. I know the period, right? Anyhow, let's reduce that and go to the British turn. I'm going to launch some attacks now with the British forces. Some of the Russian cav has gotten close enough I want to fling against them. I can always retreat, I'm cav, right? I reposition these guys to better handle what the Russians are up to, and I'm flinging the French in. Now the French are, I'm sorry, not the French. The Russian cav is interesting because it has defensive fire. I'm assuming pistols and whatnot still, which aren't really a major facet for the British cav, it seems. So that means I get defensive fire. After defensive fire, I can retreat cav, though. So I can choose not to actually fight. Now, where is that? The non-phasing player can retreat 1 hex during defensive fire. This is done after defensive fire. I don't know if that's true. I feel like that's one that got changed. Nope. have been resolved. Only those cav in the zone of control of a non-cav may retreat. They may never be retreated into an enemy zone of control. Now, retreat allows displacement, so we're not stuck because we cluttered too close. Offensive fire comes before offensive fire. I don't get any shots, although some of these artillery, I still think I'm too far away. Well, no, I'm obviously not. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I can get some shots off. I should have been taking shots last round as well. Let me do the defensive fire from this artillery back here from the Russian turn, because they should get some chance to disrupt this attack. But then we go back and we get the one charge, because otherwise the Russian cav is just like, yeah, we don't want to face this. So I chased one infantry back a little bit. Big deal. It would have gotten a chance to recover too. Yeah, right. That's one thing. Russian units are going to stay in trouble. Now the French don't have to worry. So they're charging forward here, and I have 2-to-1 odds in the clear, which puts me over here on this ranking. Usually use dice and things to mark my position, and I'm on the level 4, which is the second best. I already took fire. The fire couldn't do anything to me. A 2 can't hurt a 4. Oh, that didn't work. I bumped it. We get a 3, which means we cause a disruption here, but the cav is all disrupted as well. And disrupted cav can't retreat before combat, which means I've just opened these cav up to being hit pretty hard, because that is... And this is why I just don't know. Oh, optional rule, disrupted cav may not take advantage of 11.26. I'm assuming that's intended as, without some kind of explanation of the optional rule, I just assume they're more historically accurate, but it may just be some playtesters were like, that's stupid. And others saw it as reasonable, and it was just kind of a, okay, think it how you will. But yeah. So that's the end of that. When these Brits come in, and they're going to come in, I think, down here. No, the first set comes in up here as well. I'm going to have to give them markers equal to their morale so that I can account for their fatigue. The question here is, do the Russians want to take this redoubt out from the Turks before they deal with things? Well, if the Brits are going to advance themselves, let's just try to wipe them out. This thing's scary. There's no question about that. But the rest, you know, I can get kind of good surroundings on them and maybe wipe out some units. I decided to do a little bit of everything. Yeah, damn it. Trying to cut this cav apart, maybe hit this. I've got a couple of decent firing units there. Of course, I'm going to get shot back by, you know, one of these is probably going to get shot back. Trying to take out some artillery here, putting a position here that threatens these. Now, these artillery get to do some harm to me. And then seeing what I can do about that. Guns have done some work. We disrupted this. That makes this a really questionable attack. Probably not worth doing. I am allowed to melee. I won't be allowed to shoot. Up here, disrupting the line a little bit up there. And, you know, not a whole lot of weakening, though. Concentrated fire up here killed one of the French cav. You know, I mean, it's disrupted. It would retreat if it weren't for that errata optional. And I don't know which one I believe more, honestly. And now it's to melee. An initial big question. I would be attacking at 1-to-1 in the clear, but on the crappy 2 table, which means I have almost no chance. Clear 1-to-1 here. The 2 table, only a 5 or a 6 gives me anything. Only a 6. Oh, no. Oh, calf units get destroyed by this. Yeah, there's no reason for that attack. That would be horrible, but we'll see what the other ones can bring me. I think this is going to go rather poorly for the Russians, because they're forced to attack in a lot of cases. Not up here, because that's a disrupted unit, but in a lot of these cases, they're going to be forced to attack. And they're not at the best of odds. Their cav might be their best feature. What about this here, down here? We'd already figured that would be a 2-to-1 in the clear, right? No, that's not clear. That's a town. Definitely don't want to hit that. Something very weird here. Whenever a disrupted cav unit engages in melee, it's eliminated. This is regardless of results or whether the cav is attacking or defending. This is weird because there's an asterisk on the melee table which says cav units are eliminated on that. And there does not appear to be any modifier to that. I'm actually willing to attack that under those circumstances, because I probably get away alive. Which is why Cav can't. If Cav can't retreat after, if that optional rule is in place, Cav basically die if they're used. That feels ridiculous. Which means, after defensive fire, let's get rid of that fucking optional. After defensive fire, these would have retreated before combat instead. And because they're disrupted, they're going to die. And I can't buy that optional. The cav is just too weak. Managed to wipe out some of the light cav over here. Of course, it's all at a cost. All of our cav is disrupted now and in trouble. But whatevers. And that's going to put us on those new British forces coming in. I don't even feel like I can handle it. I don't know why. Yeah, I'm not sure. I felt like something... Maybe my lighter needs refilling. Maybe that's what it is. Even though the Russian army is kind of shitty, most of it recovers. Some key pieces that aren't. This is going to be kind of tricky to figure out how I'm going to do things. I got to kill this to save these guys. Most of the Brits are staying the same back here. The heavy cav, the infantry, whatever. And I'm just going to, fire an offensive fire with my artillery and keep trying to beat up the Russian thing. This, I had to move into place, and we had to charge the light brigade. How about that? The French slip around behind this thing, try to dismantle that side of the Russian equation. These guys marched their full movement allowance. They each took a hit. And that one did not get his. This one I hope did. Yeah. Got to do some counter battery fire on this. Didn't do anything. Fire elsewhere. The only thing that was effective was here. I managed to combine all the fire from these and disrupt that. But then it just doesn't have to melee. I have to look at the specific rules. I don't know if it's each turn that they move full or melee, or is the fatigue. Each time one of these units moves its full, executes a melee, or suffers disruption, its fatigue is reduced by 1. That's an interesting wording. Is that cumulative? It doesn't, there's no indication of it because it says each turn instead of each time. I'm going to say this guy moved his full and suffered a disruption. He still only gets penalized once for that. Is capable of taking a couple of Russians out. We chased him out of here. We blew this guy up. I don't know where the other one was. This one killed something that shouldn't have been there. I did retreat my cav where it was in danger, which was here, but I still got a shot that I... That's a 2 against a 4. Can't do shit. Okay. That's life. A lot of these guns have very low range. Again, something in me feels like some of these have more to do with the scale of the game, of each individual battle, but I'm not sure because there are A quality guns in this, so which can fire out to 6. So, but you know, like these Gs and Ds have a lot of firepower, so these might be like rifled, and some of these others may be smoothbores. I don't know. This is the kind of stuff that I would have really liked to see in the designer's notes instead of poetry that like is familiar to all of us, at least with the light brigade one. The heavy brigade, I think I had seen it before, but now we go to the melee. Brits did not do well on the melee here. We got pushed back, disordered. Here we were already disordered, which is dangerous, but not really, because even though we're on the worst table possible, our 5 morale means the worst we can take is a 1, which just retreats us, which is fine, you know. Time to rally. Morale units, they just recover. I probably forgot to recover the French, which is why they were still fatigued. Yeah, they were still disrupted from their charge. I don't think I rolled for them. Anyway, here we are on the 5th turn. And again, if you can sucker the Russians into chasing you, but that's their option to do. The Russian units have a lot harder time regaining their morale. At least some of them. There's like the Cossacks and stuff that have reasonably high morale. But the infantry is pretty crap. And throwing crap units into a battle is not a good idea, but throwing crap disrupted units is a good way to create some points. So right now we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4. No idea with the artillery, but these are worth 3 each. So that's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 to 2 Russians. So, I mean, I could fall back and go on the defensive with the Russians, which might be my best move at this point, just because other than some opportunities to try to kill a British decent unit, the thing I really want to do is hold these redoubts. The battery didn't charge properly. I am making my way through the historical stuff. One thing it's doing is putting a new light on the Art of Siege Sevastopol game. And some stuff that's not properly, I don't know if not properly covered, but some stuff that I feel I kind of want to replay and see if it matches as well, because my memory doesn't seem to match with it. But, and that is one of my favorite Siege games, by the way. I like it better than the Lille one, how it uses the same kind of system. However, I mean, the campaign itself was kind of ridiculous. It was a situation where, like, neither Britain nor France could kind of afford, like, their goals were achieved without their armies being present, and then they show up in the Crimea, and there's no real, like, they come to the Crimea with no real reason to be fighting there. Like, the goals for the war are over, but except that their governments might not last if, like, they didn't actually put troops in the field and whatnot. And then both Alma and Balaclava are just sort of comedies of error in terms of bad generalship, weird shit going on. To the extent that these games do not capture it. I could see something like a CWB system with its orders system with really, really bad generals and a layer of like random events that were kind of added to CWB at one point would actually give some possibility of creating this kind of mess that historically is happening. Although this feels really weird because like the British units aren't that bad, but there's just no way I can take the redoubts back. I think we shall see. Anyhow, let's get, I guess, some Ruskies coming in, and then we got another, well, not coming in, but figure out what I'm going to do with them, which is mainly try to defend my position. These attacks, the points that I get off of killing Allied troops aren't that good. It's not worth chasing too far off and giving up my defensive position for that, and maybe losing the redoubts, which are actually important to the victory points. And I can probably get some opportunity kills in if I fall back. That's my hope. Certainly I don't want to be facing all these cannon here, because they're not going to be able to do anything once I withdraw. Russians fall back into a shape that I don't like. They're being outflanked over here and kind of crammed in. But there's not that many enemies, although there is this force. And then I've got this with an opening over here that the Cav could try to exploit across. Of course, the Cav can't actually occupy the redoubts, so that sucks. I think it can get in via the road, but that's not going to be available. Some lucky shots disordered some units that have not recovered yet. But that's pretty much the end of the Russian turn. Now on to the Allies, and we got another bunch of Brits coming in, I think, through here. And we're working on trimming down the northernmost Russian forces up here with the reserves and whatnot. These guys coming in, can't get far enough yet. Making a little probing attack here and here. Exposed artillery, I don't know, you know, is it something to trick the Russians to come down? I don't know. Is it worth them coming down? Standard line of sight rolls, I can't see these guys from here. So I've got to fire this way. Just sort of pointing some little ickies out. Defensive fire does very little. I do push this unit back. I'm out of 4-point markers from here, so I could pull something else out, but I'm using an 8 because I know an 8's gonna make me think, what the hell? Hopefully I remember what the hell. I can put a 4. Because there are markers for other nations or that aren't neutrals. And before recovery, units being pushed back by fire alone here. French melee the Russian Cav, and you can see it's kind of like the Cav is going to just bounce off each other and disrupt, and then it becomes who can reform their Cav the quickest and, you know, scare the other guys away, because they'll get their retreat before combat, you know, whatever, which is what happened here. But here we plowed in. We've killed quite a few Russian units now. One over here, just, you know, causing all kinds of chaotic disruption in the Russian line. It's not really able to hold up. We're not quite up to turn 6 yet. I have to roll some recoveries. The British do have that, and of course the French. This is kind of actually sticking to the historical, which is that the Russians did take all of bastions, and then the Brits get to come back, etc. The Brits did not do terribly well. Both sides thought they lost the battle. The game gives the Russians probably a win in the historical, but you will not play the Brits as ridiculously as they actually did. I've got an attack coming in here at the corner here, running the Brits and the French up over here, and then quite a widespread attack to try to take this tail off and get access to those guys. If I can take any one of these, it takes the Russian points away for the bastions. And if I can get all of these, it gives me my points. So, you know, it feels like the kingpin is over here, but it really isn't. Taking away the other player's bastion is, you know, one of the ones that they require for victory points is sufficient to, like, bring the game to just casualties. Now, just casualties, the Russians are winning right now. But they may not be, because British firepower is so potent. And then when it comes down to melee, it comes to melee. Anyway, time for the defensive fire. Well, it hits notably on, you know, these infantry coming forward, that when they get disordered, they take a fatigue hit. And these aren't necessarily all that strong. They, you know, they get down to that, especially these guys with their 3 morale. And things worked okay here for the Brits, but then they started coming around and the results were not so good. We got flung back in a lot of cases. Not such a big deal with the French, but the fatigued English units, you know, forced into a melee, etc. And then I've got a couple of units pushing harder that succeeded, but now they're in a position where the Russians probably are going to be melee attacking them again, which will cost them another hit. My battery charged, how about that? That's more often it doesn't. So here it is, like 4:30 on a Friday, already going dark. On top of that, I did finish the historical stuff. It was enjoyable. It was really enjoyable. I don't know what was preventing me, because actually the political background was interesting as well, and that's what I had read where I stopped. I think I just got diverted by other stuff. I'm trying to debate whether or not I go dancing, but I mean, part of it is, if I don't, and I don't go shopping tomorrow, that will really suck. Like, that's sort of the stupidest of all possible outcomes. But right now, I'm going to get myself a turn done in this. I got to break away from this other computer game. It broke me of the one that I was playing, where I was like running a guild and whatnot. And I just abandoned my guild and gave it to someone else. I may still play it. But this other one is eating up my time too much. Although, honestly, I don't know. I mean, either one can do it. And I'm like, I can walk away. It's not like Raid was. All right, let's figure out what the Russians are going to do. You know, earlier I had this, geez, how do you stop the Russians? They're going to take everything. Well, yeah, but the Russian army sucks. And this is more or less the historical situation. The Russians did take the bastions and then were counterattacked. They were just counterattacked in a really, really fucking weird way. Including like a position like this, where Lord Raglan ends up positioning himself up on this hill behind the Russian lines without being noticed, and then orders some artillery up there, which like gains him this huge advantage. But, you know, I mean, like the charge of the Light Brigade was essentially a misspoken order, where it wasn't clear enough what was intended, and all kind of shit like that. And it's just, like I said, this one and Alma are basically comedies of error. I don't feel that as much, at least from the representation given, I don't feel that as much about the Inkerman and whatever the fuck this is, Chernaya River. Anyway, Let me switch pipes because I came up here thinking I had enough pipe, but I got through it already. End up that I have to bite the bucket, kick the bullet, bite the bullet, and throw a tarp in my basket to go shopping. I don't know how many years it's been since I did that. Certainly, like, it was something that I had to do because I could only go shopping on Sundays, you know, with my wife, or when I was working or whatever. But after she died, I felt a lot more freed up to pick my days. In the winter, hard to do when I was working. So I think I did it, you know, once or twice in between in that year or so. But then now, just like, yeah, let me just wait. Let me wait it out. But my stocks are so low. Russians falling back as much as they can into this thin line that's surrounded. It's not cool, but I feel like to hold the defensive terrain here, I don't want to move forward and engage where I'm already being interrupted into, yeah, I gotta fight. And then I'm trying to reoccupy these heading up. I still have some artillery, etc. available, but now it's the British defensive fire. Let's get some effective fire, however, and the Russians get none. This unit moved, but, I mean, they got shots, they got potential effective fire, but they didn't get it. And now we go to the melee, which, I don't know. I'm forced here, so I may want to throw things in. I'm forced here. I don't know. Stabilize their line, throwing the Brits back in a couple of places, taking this location. They actually rallied this unit too, which is pretty impressive. Maybe the more important thing is they're causing fatigue on those British units. Eventually they'll become essentially non-functional because they'll be disrupted all the time. You could still attack with them, but it's high danger. And then there's also well, I don't know if their fire combat is reduced to nothing. No, they still have some fire combat after that. And gotta check the numbers here. I'm at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 melee strength points. It's like 22 or something like that I gotta watch. Let's take the Allied turn and try to figure out how to crack this thing. It looks incredibly appealing to try to hit this thin part of the line from both sides, but it's not going to give me as much advantage as I like because this is all, it's going to bring additional units into play, I think. But that does look appealing. Another thing is, could I stab up and get here? Might be able to disrupt disrupted, oh no, Cav isn't going to be able to take the redoubt anyway. Yeah, I'm not going to get to the redoubt either. So probably want to try to pick this off all by itself. An overall assault to try to pin this in isn't very good. But I am able to prevent these Cav from retreating. This one could, after defensive fire, I'm trying to hit the lines here, trying to reduce it. I've got units that are about ready to be disordered due to fatigue at this point, though. So it feels like the Brits are going to kind of fall apart on this assault up here sometime soon. It's so hard to get any effective Russian fire. It's just a matter of, you know, you count up their units and you get something like, I don't know, I was able to get a 4 somewhere. Well, here I was able to get a 4. That's only facing a 3 morale, so that was reasonable chance of being successful. I needed a 5 or higher. But like somewhere over here, I was at 1, 2, 3, 4 here, and a 4 versus a 4. I got a 1 in 6, and I'm throwing, so much in. It looks like, but it really isn't. They just don't have a lot of firepower on these Russian units. The artillery does. It was not effective, because even the 8 table has trouble hitting high morale unit, or isn't guaranteed to hit high morale units. So that gets me to the offensive fire. They may be happy just disrupting a Russian unit and not trying to push the melee against it, because that way they don't get a fatigue marker. I have more and more respect for this system. Anyway, after the melees and whatnot, we pushed the Russians in a little bit further. This is still unoccupied, but it's Russian controlled if it matters. Yeah, the fatigue part is really, really appealing. Make the numbers a lot higher as to what fatigue you could have, and I think you could have sort of a more general system here. The reason these guys are affected by fatigue so extremely is because they were in trenches and whatnot and came to the battle not in great shape to begin with. Well, they were in trenches and they were awake. They had been on duty at night, at least many of them, and that, creates a particular problem, right? But I feel like there's something appealing to it in general, where I think accounting for it on a unit-by-unit basis is probably too much. Certainly on paper, that would be too much. It's not too bad in this scenario with just a handful of units doing it. But I'm thinking for a larger battle, something like that, using kind of, hey, if you move its parent formation, you make a mark or something like that. And then you can recover it by resting and things. But I like how it and I've seen things like that, right? Certainly TSS had a fatigue that way. I'm trying to remember. I feel like at least some CWB stuff or NBS had that, where you're marking things off and you can recover the unit. Oh, what did was Summer Storm. That definitely did. But I don't remember this in CWB. But there's something that works really, really well about this in terms of just, you've got these points on particular units and you're like, yeah, let's hold that unit back, not throw him into the fight and everything. But also the integration of how, the Brits really want to use fire combat. Well, they really, really want to use it here because of the fatigue, because it doesn't cost them if they succeed with the fire combat. So it's putting some really neat and interesting little choices on me that I'm not familiar with, and as I get more used to using, playing with the system, they're really making me very happy. I wish there was an easier way to record the fatigue, because something like that, again, I think could work really, really well. All right. On a rare Saturday, while it's still daylight, sometimes I make it up here and it's nighttime. Kind of doesn't count the same. I got up, I could have gone shopping. I did go dancing last night. But I'm drinking less, and, I got up at like 2:30, somewhere around there. I could have, if I rushed out right away, could have maybe made it in time. And then the rest of this week is all going to be rainy. I don't know what that means. But I just, I wanted to play my video game thing, whatever. And now it's a couple hours later. And I needed to eat and all kind of stuff. I'm just even though, anyway, here we are back at Balaclava, and I guess we start. The Russians go first. Things are looking like I don't know who's going to win. And it's not following the historical battle in the sense that, like, that whole comedy of errors is just not going to happen. It can't happen. Which brings up all kind of questions about, when you have a really weird situation like that, should the game be scripted or not? Well, at the very least, the game should be reasonably able to create the weirdness that would happen, and this just doesn't. I don't mind random events. I feel like scripting is a little too heavy, but random events that handle the things that did happen and things that could have happened that didn't. And don't make them too likely, Well, the Brits moved some undefended guns up. I'm throwing a cav charge against them. Very Charge of the Light Brigade type thing, but, I think it's going to do damage to the guns. Attack against this one essentially is that type of historical situation in terms of just being ridiculous. I was guaranteed to be disordered, but I could still try to attack the guns, but that would wipe me out. So I won't, Things are looking worse after the Russian turn. You had, some forced attacks that ended up deforming our defense a little bit more. We lost this due to firepower, and now it's on the British turn, or Allied turn. There are some French still here. And yeah, it's really just a matter of how much time is it going to take me to degrade the Russian position enough and take some of these back, the redoubts. Point-wise, it's not all that. It looks ugly for the Russians, but remember, there's these Turks. They kind of blend in a little bit, and also the British units have a little higher value. So, it comes down to the bastions. But if they don't generate any points, then it's a pretty close battle right now. But I think the additional turns, the Russians are going to suffer more losses. But an attack like that on the artillery, an opportunity attack of that type, yes, it leaves these cav out there and ready to get beaten up. And, I had some artillery fire that I neglected to take. Oops. British attacks are slowing down because they have to kind of husband their fatigue levels. And, we're not going all out, but trying to get what we can out of it. Got an attack over there. That's an unrestricted. And then, we got the artillery and the cav and whatnot doing their little patrol works. The French trying to recover, but it's Russian defensive fire, which could be quite impressive here, actually. We do have some units we could hit that we could get some destructions on. Didn't get a hell of a lot, but I did manage to disorder a couple of units, and that, again, that throws a fatigue on them. Slip into turn 9. The British attacks are slowing down. These guys are at the stage where I want to leave them one melee attack left on them to defend, right? So that the Russians can't just charge in and beat them up for free. As, permanently disordered units, whatever. So I'm kind of running low on how many attacks I can make over there. And then, the French cav has a recycle rate, basically, because it may or may not become available. And then the fact that Cav can retreat makes these raids kind of effective. Now, if I was playing with that optional rule that Cav can't retreat if it's disordered, these guys would be toast. But we saw some problems with that, basically. If Cav attacks, it's disordered, so it won't be able to get away. So the infantry will be able to chase it down. That does not feel accurate to me. The infantry, gets shots at them, but they really can't do a hell of a lot to the Cav. This artillery blinking at them can. All right, I think it's time for me to take my Saturday bath, one way or another. But yeah. The thing about Saturdays is, I'm trying to fight it by coming up here and playing some, but it's when I most feel, suicidal and whatnot. If there's such a thing, I most hope for death. It's not like I really contemplate any kind of self-harm or anything. But the day after gaming, and this is what I tried to get at my video, but I didn't really state it clearly. When I say, oh, I need this time to recover, yeah, but that recovery time is always very much like I can't do anything, and I want things to end, because there's just this general downgrading. Like, I think some of the injuries I took from that punch, I don't think they're healing. Like, I've got aches in my eye and everything, and I should see a doctor, but I don't do that. Anyway, Russians moved a little bit around, making a threat on this Cav here. If they can hold these three, they get their win. They get their big bonus points. The Brits need these three to get their big bonus points. That sounds a lot harder. I think I ought to concentrate on making sure I take one of these away. I've got one of these. It doesn't make much difference, to be honest, if I'm not going to get them all. I thought it was 4. I thought both had to occupy 4 of them, which means that neither is going to get the points because we took this. But now it's 3 each. I just rechecked it. And I'm like, yeah, I better start focusing on taking the stuff that the Russians are going to get points for, because me getting points is pretty hard. Me being the Brits, of course, for whatever reason. All right, on to defensive fire. Russian side of the turn, they did very little of any value. They retreated here accidentally. They chased the Brit Cav away. Here, we shot this unit and or we meleeed that unit. Lost the melee, but we gave it its last fatigue. So now it's down to a 0. It cannot recover. I want to go hide it somewhere, just so it doesn't have to fight. Should be considering trying to get a couple of units off here too. I forgot about that. I just completely forgot that that's one of their goals. 2 or more units off the south edge. That's worth 15 big points. That's enough to swing the game even if we lose this. So I ought to start moving my Russians, a couple of their Cav, to get out of there. Now, they're going to undergo fire by all this artillery, but I may also force British to go back and defend the artillery. Which could be of value in terms of holding the redoubts. It kind of sucks that, for the Russians at least, that I noticed that on the British turn, their forces, just doing what I would do anyway towards trying to get to here, are marching over and covering. I'm also bringing a massive attack against the Cav here. It's not going to do anything. These guys are just going to retreat after defensive fire. And also up in the north trying to cover things. This is the destroyed unit. I'm going to try to hold this, but the Russians might retake it. As we push into turn 10, these guys are not going to come in. Well, like I predicted, I wasn't able to completely surround those couple of Russian cav, or the one over here, so they pushed back. We did manage to take a bastion. That takes the big 30 points away, bringing it to a casualties only, unless, for the most part, unless the Russians can get a couple of units off here, which is going to be difficult to do, because they kind of got screened. I could have made a quick breakdown. Of course, trying to do that, there's a good chance that artillery would just light them up. The Russians are doing quite a few things. I shifted a bunch of my cav down here to try to cut it through. Still got this unit, but I got to get 2 off. Losing most of my cav is worth the victory points that I could get. I'm positioning some units up here for a possible attack on this. Just, why not? But I am also making an attack on this one this turn. Well, that was mostly a failure. The artillery got shot out. These guys weren't strong enough to take it and got pushed back. At least they didn't get damaged. They had a shot. But now on to the Allies. And Allied cav making moves in response, trying to trim things here, take that second bastion up there, and hiding up there. That's Raglan. Turning turn 11, and the British managed to take this redoubt. They got flung back here. Oh no, they successfully retreated the Russian unit. That's what happened. That was a firepower attack. That's cool because that was the only thing I had that's fatigable that was involved. Still nowhere near the 22 on my 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah. Let's keep going. My tea is done, so I have to go down. I'm looking at Bloody April. This is not the first time I've looked at it. This is I did Elusive Victory by the same designer. I was hoping a World War I version would feel better. Man, these games, these just kill me. I don't know why. They're just like, I generally like complex stuff, but this particular, maybe it's because it's air. It's just, it really feels hard to cope with for me. From what I'm reading, I'm just a little bit into the rules, and I'm like, oh my god, I don't know. I love World War I air combat. I want a campaign for it that maybe I can peel out in dogfight scenarios with. This is just too hefty, I think, I don't know. I bought it knowing that Elusive Victory was too much for me. Anyway, reading the rules that I already know are too difficult is I become avoidant about them. So I'm like with everything, but I figure it's Saturday. I can give up on it again if I want to. I don't know. Anyway, we got a couple more turns here. I actually have a full thing of tea. I have a full pipe. Game's gotten kind of quick. We might make it through. First thing is, these blockers here, they're enough to prevent me from getting off the map. I don't even know if I had an opportunity to do so. It sucks when you forget the victory conditions. And, when it's just a mass of things like this, it's kind of hard to remember them. Much like the rules themselves are often difficult to remember. So, yeah, I'll try to do something else with the Russians. You know, worst comes to worst, we can get the, we might have killed more points worth, but it doesn't look good for them. And we've lost a couple of these, so we're not going to get them back, you know. It's not going to stop us from trying. We got some shot at it, not much. We're also going to try to eliminate some cav here, and just see what we can do with that, given that he's being left out there alone. Attacks were largely unsuccessful, although we did wipe out those cav that we had surrounded. At least there's that. And here, we dropped a unit to its fatigue level, so it's now disordered, even though we ran away. So the Brits probably won't, yeah, they're not going to be able to get anybody there, I don't think. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I think that's the only unit that can defend there. Which, maybe that falls, but it's not worth anything in victory points. However, killing the unit is worth something. They're kind of in, well, the Allies in general, in killing mode. Although, I don't know about this. I can't kill that. It's going to get to retreat. But elsewhere, I'm picking on things here. I don't know what I think I'm doing with them. I should probably just pull them back. Let's just throw them back there. That gives me some flexibility if something falls loose or something next turn, because I'm not going to get any advantage out of attacking that. That gets us to the end of the second to last turn. We end up, you know, I think it's mostly decided. It's just really a matter of how the points are. And the Brits managed to kill a couple of Russian units, which again, that's a couple more points. I don't think the Russians have much opportunity to do anything that's worthwhile. If I can kill this, that would be really worth something, but it's looking kind of tough. I'm misplaying something all along. One of the effects, this was covered by having the movement point allowance on the units. One of the effects of disruption is that it halves the movement allowance. I'm not going to change now, but next game I will try to remember that. But it's really hard when the numbers aren't on there. You know, I mean, it's like, I don't know why they decided to put no movement allowance on some of the counters and then mark the zeros here. It was hard enough getting to learn the movement allowance being up here where it's a stupid location. That's where I would expect the morale to be honest. And often I treated that as the movement allowance, as the morale. When I was playing the Alma one, it's just an expectations thing. But you know, come on. Once they made that decision for one of the games, put the movement allowances on. Just put them on all of them. It wouldn't be that hard. We're gonna try the attack here. These guys have fled, leaving that to its own devices. It's really not worth much. It's worth the unit, is what it's worth, because it's either Russians control all three, or there are no points for it. Oh, after fire combat, and I don't even think we could hurt this thing. We were up on the 8 or more column. No, we could have. We didn't get a good roll, though. Right, 2, 4, 6, plus those 2 Ds. So now I'm at 13-2, 6-1 in the Bastion. Puts me here. And I do have a 4 unit. So our starting place is there. The 3, 1, 2, 3, we get a 2-star. That's good enough to kill this unit. And I can take this Bastion as well. It's not really worth anything, but I get it. And that's going to put it on the British side. I need to swap batteries. You know, I mean, we're just trying to kill a few units with what's left in both cases. And our final setup, we're going to try to kill that. That should be pretty easy, but this thing as well. Let's see if we can take it out. unlikely, but whatever. Kind of screwed up here. I shouldn't have fired with both my units because I had no chance. That was a low morale unit. What I have to do is I have to disorder it without giving it a retreat. And no matter what, up on the 8 or more, I was going to give it a retreat. Now, I could have not fired with everything and had a 1/3 chance of being able to hit it, whatever. If it comes to a 1-point game, that's what it came down to. Obviously, something surrounded, very easy to take. That's gone. And this is the final positioning for whatever that's worth. Now I do the counting. I thought it was just counter cost. It's actually the number of melee strength points in each case, which could throw... I think the Russians are in a lot of trouble because they have a lot of melee strength points. A failure to pay attention to the victory conditions. This was a blowout all along because 4 Russian artillery got wiped out. They're hard to keep alive, and they are worth, 15 each, so that's a 60-point thing. I already had huge casualty benefits, though, as well. I was already ahead with casualties, so it's like 140 points for the Allies versus about 50 for the Russians. Turns out it was a big enough victory for the Allies here that it kind of wouldn't have mattered if I had lost the redoubts or whatever. Interesting. Not what I thought was going on. Now I gotta clean up and the Kremlin pieces, and then once I get everything cleaned away, I don't know. I guess I can put some thoughts here. Yeah, I mean, that initial onslaught of the Russians, I thought, wow, there's nothing the Allies can do. Well, they have a couple of infantry pieces to begin the game with, which are fairly powerful because they have a high firepower, etc. The French cav is a big bonus when it comes in. And then those additional English infantry forces are also very powerful. So like what looked like a complete, it looked like the Russians were just going to overwhelm the English position. Now, what if I had gotten a couple of pieces off? That's another 15, so it could be 45. That starts to bring it into a closer range. I definitely screwed up by not having the Russians in position to try to retreat, try to get a couple of units, not retreat, but advance to the harbor and cause some issues. But yeah, the difference between... Like, my view was this was a close battle all along because I just saw the amount of casualties piling up. But the Russians have such higher melee strength that their pieces are actually worth quite a bit. And I didn't really realize that, like, the British infantry are only worth a point per melee strength, and they don't tend to have a lot of melee strength. The cav is where their points kind of came over. That's 14 points there from that. Overall, I found it an intriguing little situation, even if I misplayed kind of on both sides, not really having a good view of what the victory the victory conditions were. That's often the case. You give me too complex a victory point salad, and I just have trouble coping. But well, we'll get the next one. I think Inkerman's next. Cut it here. This is the counter mix. I don't know, 1s and 2s. They might have gotten mixed up. I had one unit that was at a 4 fatigue level. One unit that was at a 0. I feel like I kind of used those British units at about the right level. Yeah, there were some opportunities for more, but like I said, I kind of want to keep it one on units. If they're going to defend something, they kind of need a value, and even a 1 wasn't sufficient to defend there. So that's definitely a factor. I actually really like the fatigue system here with the counters for it, and am curious about the idea of a game like this using that same kind of fatigue system, but for all the units, with a higher value on the fatigue. It might just be that these are like 45-minute turns. That a full day of battle, that the units are expected to be able to fight a full day of battle. God, my eye is bugging me. It's like, I don't know. My eye is bugging me. My nose doesn't work quite right. Yeah. But anyway, just wanted to give that view before I load this up.